To Save a Hobbit by Random Plot Bunny, based on The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, recorded by Sierra Steinbrecher. Chapter 1. It all started with a sudden lack of appetite, and his having to cut back to 6 meals, and then to 5 a day instead of the proper 7, but he passed it off as an oncoming cold and thought nothing more of it. Next was the tiredness, the weakness, and how he had to take frequent breaks when doing his daily chores now, when he never had to take them before. He realized something was truly wrong when he found tiny drops of blood on his handkerchief after a coughing fit, so he decided to visit the healers. After describing all of his symptoms, lack of appetite, weakness, the blood, and letting them perform their multitudes of tests, he had his answer. It was the wasting sickness. He had a year to live, possibly 2, but no more. News spread fast in the Shire, and pitying looks were soon following the poor dear wherever he went. But he held his head high. He was a Baggins, and he would comport himself as such until the end. He spoke with the healers time and again. There had to be something that could be done. He even asked if the elves could help if he were to go to them, but the answer was always the same. There was nothing anyone, not even the wondrous healers of the elves, could do. Eventually, he accepted his fate, got his affairs in order, and gave up. He even stopped dreaming about the miracle cures of the elves. A few months passed then as he got his symptoms under control by adding a variety of herbs to his tea and taking frequent breaks. He still became tired for no reason, and he was down to a disgraceful 4 meals a day, and had to force himself to eat everything he fixed himself at that. But he could do his chores and get up in the morning without feeling so exhausted. Plus, he now rarely coughed up blood unless he overexerted himself. He was taking to sitting outside for a quiet smoke in the mornings before his neighbors arose to give him pitying stares, and that was when he was approached with a most unexpected proposal. "Good morning," he ventured to say to the large figure in gray towering over him. "What do you mean?" What? Was this man actually questioning the phrase, "good morning"? He couldn't possibly be, could he? Bilbo quietly thought to himself. "Do you mean to wish me a good morning, or do you mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not?" He was! The strange man who has disrupted his peaceful morning smoke was questioning a simple greeting. Incredible. Or perhaps you mean to say that you feel good on this particular morning. Well, he certainly hadn't met that one. He hadn't felt good since his diagnosis. Or are you simply stating that this is a morning to be good on? Oh, he was finally done, but not to respond to such a ridiculous string of questions. "All of them at once, I suppose," he finally answered. Why was he looking at him that way, Bilbo wondered. It was very rude to stare at someone as if they were on display. "May I help you?" He knew it wasn't the smartest question to ask, but he needed a way to stop that disconcerting stare. "That remains to be seen." Okay, that wasn't very helpful. Oh, he wasn't finished yet. "I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure." The Hobbit was stunned. Why would anyone want him to go on an adventure? About to tell this mystery man that he wasn't interested, he caught sight of Lobelia watching him before she flounced off. She had made it a point to come by every day to see if he was dead yet. Not that she would say it that way, but he knew that that was the reason for her frequent visits. He only wished he could see the look on her face when his will was read, and she found out that she was completely cut off. He was sure she would throw a fit to rival all others. Looking back up to the figure, he swallowed the words he had been about to say. Did he really want to waste away in the Shire being pitied and suffering with people breathing down his neck, just waiting for him to die? Lobelia wasn't the only one. She was just the most forward about it. Or did he want to spend what little time he had left on an adventure that his mother would be proud of him for going on? Decision made, Bilbo smiled up at the figure. An adventure? I'd love to go on an adventure. When did we start? His Shire had been taken over by dwarves. He had to admit that when he had agreed to host the company overnight after agreeing to go on the proposed adventure, Gandalf, who had finally introduced himself, had seemed surprised when he had accepted so readily that he hadn't thought he would be travelling with dwarves. But it would definitely be an adventure, he had to admit. Travelling with dwarves was something even his mother had never done, though he still didn't know what all this was about. He had cleared out his pantries to make a feast for his travelling companions. Since they were all leaving the next day, he didn't want the food to rot before someone got around to clearing it all out, and had written letters to explain his disappearance. He had directed everyone to just assume he was dead and to divvy up his positions accordingly. If they did it soon after he left, he might even be able to hear Lobelia's screech of anger echoing through the valley. As his Shire filled with the lively group, he had had only one off moment when he had come face to axe with the dwarf Biffa. The poor man had seemed to be friendly enough, but Bilbo couldn't stop staring at the embedded axe blade. How had he even survived? It wasn't until Thorin Oakenshield, the leader of the dwarven group, had arrived, that the Hobbit had finally gotten a clue as to where they would all be going. Though Bilbo had almost reconsidered going after he had been insulted on his own doorstep. No Baggins worthy of the name would ever stoop so low as to be a grocer. As he brought a candle over at Gandalf's request, he saw a map of what had to be their destination. "The Lonely Mountain," he read. Gloin, who was sitting next to his nearly deaf brother, spoke up. "Aye, Orn has read the portents, and the portents say it is time." Spurred on by his brother, Oin spoke up to verify this. "Ravens have been seen flying back to the mountain as it was foretold. When birds of yore return to Erebor, the reign of the beast will end." What beast?" Bilbo asked, wanting clarification. Bolfer seemed all too happy to explain. "That would be a reference to Smaug the Terrible, chiefest and greatest calamity of our age. Airborne fire breather. Teeth like razors, claws like meat hooks. Extremely fond of precious metals. Yes, I know what a dragon is. The way the dwarf had been describing Smaug, it was as if he was trying to make him faint. Not that he would, of course. Once you've accepted your own death, not much gets to you anymore." After Ori's outburst and the resulting table-wide argument, Gandalf handed Thorin a key and made a few comments about invisible dwarf doors. And that was when Bilbo finally found out what his place would be in this company. They needed a burglar. A few disparaging remarks made about him from the eldest Ree brother, Dory his name was, thought the Hobbit, and a rather impressive speech lauding his natural skills from Gandalf later, he was handed a contract. It's just the usual summary of out-of-pocket expenses, time required, remuneration, funeral arrangements, so forth. Balin told him as he passed the contract up the table. Funeral arrangements? He questioned. He was glad of that, as he knew he wouldn't be returning to the Shire. As Thorin and Gandalf spoke in whispers they thought he couldn't hear, he began to read off key points of the contract. Terms: cash on delivery, up to but not exceeding 1/14 of total profit, if any. Seems fair, especially since he would never live to spend any of it. Present companies shall not be liable for injuries inflicted by or sustained as a consequence thereof, including but not limited to lacerations, eviscerations, incineration. As more and more of the contract unfolded, he turned to the table with a questioning look. Who goes into such detail on a contract like this anyway? Mistaking his confusion, Bolfer once more tries to overwhelm him with visuals. "Aye, he'll melt the flesh off your bones in the blink of an eye." He must have paled slightly at that bluntness of what he had just been told, because Balin asks him a moment later, "You're all right, laddie?" "Huh? Yeah." Bilbo can feel himself warming to the old dwarf with the concern, as he was showing someone he hardly knows. But then Bolfer was doggy again. "Think furnace with wings. Flash of light, searing pain, then poof! You're nothing more than a pile of ash." The disturbing images stop, and Bilbo looks at the beheaded dwarf. "And that's it? A moment of pain, and I'm dead?" "Well, yeah, isn't that bad enough?" Bolfer asks, confused at the calm question. Giving a snort, Bilbo signs the contract. There are far worse things than death, Master Balfour. I only hope you never have to know them. Like pitying looks from all your friends and family, or people watching you counting the days until you die. Handing the signed contract back to Balin, he doesn't miss the way money changes hands. They had been betting if he would faint or not, and it looked like Bifur, Balin, and Ori were the only ones to bet that he wouldn't. Even Gandalf would bet that he would. Well, he knew who he would try to befriend while on the road, at least. I've made up the guest rooms, though I'm afraid some of you will have to triple up as there were only 6 of them. As for myself, I'm heading to bed. I've never traveled much, and so I want to be well rested for an early start. Giving the company one final nod, he returned to his room to finish packing his clothes and medicinal herbs. Stuffing a few handkerchiefs in his pack as well, he was all set. Now, all he had to worry about, besides the dangers of the road and the dragon he would face at the end of it, was keeping his illness a secret. If they knew that their burglar was dying, they may try to find anyone and leave him behind. And now that he had made the decision to leave, he really didn't want to stay. So he would keep quiet about his condition and just hope that they reached the mountain before his body gave out on him.